Then he wrote another book called the Lincoln Hypothesis, which was just fascinating. I knew that Joseph Smith and Abraham Lincoln were contemporaries of each other, but I didn't know if they had actually ever met or if they even knew about each other. And Tim gives a pretty good, powerful information that they may not only have known about each other, but that actually the Book of Mormon played an important role in U.S. history again, as Abraham Lincoln went out and actually checked out a copy of the Book of Mormon from the Library of Congress, had it for
Right.
almost 6 months. And then right after he just came out with the Emancipation Proclamation, he then 2 weeks later, after he came out with the Emancipation Proclamation, where he basically went to his cabinet. He says, basically that slavery has not been the purpose of this war, but it is now. And he said, God has called me to make this war a lot more about slavery. And his cabinet said, if you do this, if you come out with this Emancipation Proclamation, you're going to be for this. And he said, this is what we're going to do. He says, this is the will of God, and by God, we're going to do this. He had just read the Book of Mormon and the parts about this covenant with God between the United States and God, or I should say America, basically the promised land and God. And that gave him the strength to move forward with the war. And actually, from that point on, it's a fascinating book, tremendous research.
So basically, Tim Ballard hypothesizes that Abraham Lincoln read the Book of Mormon, and that his reading of the Book of Mormon inspired him to write the Emancipation Proclamation. First of all, full disclosure, I have not read the Lincoln Hypothesis. However, I know some things about Abraham Lincoln, plus I emailed the Library of Congress, so I know a little bit more about that. But first I want to talk about Abraham Lincoln. In November of 1840, in Nauvoo, Illinois, 200 Mormons erased Abraham Lincoln's name off the electoral ticket. Later in the Times and Seasons, John C. Bennett explained why they did that. He said, it's not because we didn't like Lincoln, it's because his name was the last one on the ticket, and we wanted to support the Democratic Party by writing in somebody else's name. Also in the same paragraph, John C. Bennett bragged that Abraham Lincoln came up to him and congratulated him on getting the Nauvoo City Charter passed, which no one read when it was voted on, and it caused a lot of problems later, but that's a video for another day. Anyway, Abraham Lincoln did not like the Mormons at all. Maybe he was okay with them in 1840, but certainly not in 1860 when he was the president. Lincoln bitterly opposed slavery, which the saints argued was permissible in the scriptures, and some of them even brought slaves over into Utah. And Lincoln opposed polygamy. In fact, Lincoln signed the first anti-polygamy bill that was passed in July of 1862. But that's a whole different story with Brigham Young. In an 1886 book, Abraham Lincoln is quoted as calling the Mormons a canker biting the very entrails of the United States. He also said that the church was at work to form a people of the most abject, ignorant, and fanatical slaves, who will recognize no other authority but their supreme pontiffs, and that it was aiming to destroy the schools, to raise themselves upon our ruins, and that they were the uncompromising enemies of our Constitution and our laws. Okay, going back to Tim Ballard's hypothesis. Firstly, the language of the Emancipation Proclamation does not in any way reflect the Book of Mormon. It is true that some of the passages in the Book of Mormon say that we should not make slaves of one another, but that idea was certainly not unique to the Book of Mormon text. And the Book of Mormon also says that because of wickedness, people's skin was turned black. Anyway, secondly, that Abraham Lincoln checked out the Book of Mormon from the Library of Congress himself cannot be known. So the ledger in the Library of Congress was specifically for congressional representatives and executive branch members. What they did is that they would write the representative's name at the top of the page, and any of their staff could go and check out their books in that person's name. So for November 18th of 1861, the Book of Mormon was checked out under Abraham Lincoln's name. And again, we have no idea who this was. And in looking at the list, additional books were checked out as well. You have Gunnison's Mormonism, Hyde's Mormonism, and then the Book of Mormon. And 4 days later, more books were checked out. Mormonism in All Ages, and Mormonism or Latter-day Saints. Unfortunately, I'm not sure which book this is referring to specifically. So with all these books, it sounds like somebody was just studying up on the Mormons. And because of the timing, not of the Emancipation Proclamation, which wasn't written for another year, I suspect that these books were checked out to understand the Mormons and their stance on polygamy, as the Moral Anti-Bigamy Act, the first anti-polygamy bill, was just 6 months away from being signed into law by Lincoln. And after that, he would have to contend with Brigham Young and the Mormons. That's my hypothesis. There is a section in an article published by the Library of Congress that said that the Book of Mormon had a pencil marking in it and that Abraham Lincoln did sometimes mark in pencil. The article also said that the pencil marking was in the Book of Jacob. Oh, the Book of Jacob? You mean the one place in the Book of Mormon that prohibits polygamy? Wouldn't it be interesting if that's what was marked in the Book of Mormon? Well, so I emailed them, and they emailed me back. They reiterated that they don't know for sure that Abraham Lincoln checked out the book, or that it was him that made the pencil marking, or that this was even the edition of the Book of Mormon that was checked out 163 years ago. However, he did send me an image of the pencil marking in the Book of Jacob. And just as I suspected, it's concerning polygamy. You'll see the pencil markings along the margins of the page, and in the place where it says, "And concubines he shall have none," the word none is crossed out. Because of Abraham Lincoln's disdain for the Mormons, and because he was against the Mormon teachings of slavery and polygamy, I highly doubt that Abraham Lincoln was in any way inspired by the Book of Mormon, let alone to write the Emancipation Proclamation.